We've spoken of the political environment. I want to talk to you about the economic environment. You've touched upon some issues already. What I specifically want to talk about is the way you brought about the changes in this consent order mechanism, or the ability of SEBI to settle with certain alleged offenders or violators. Now, I know that in the context, so before that change came about, you spoke very eloquently of the pressures that the 99% are putting on regulators across the world to be perceived to be more fair and more equitable. You said this at an IBA conference early this year, and a few months thereafter, SEBI brought in this change to consent orders. I'm connecting the two. I'm not saying the two are necessarily connected, but I'm connecting the two. Many people have appreciated what you have said and done, that there are certain offences that are way too serious to be settled in any fashion. But we put this question to two other regulators, a former chairperson of the SEC, Harvey Pitt, and a former SEBI chairman, Mr. Damodaran, and they both thought it was an interesting experimentation, but it may backfire. SEBI may have boxed itself in.
Let me begin by answering the background of this question that you raised just now, and I would re-endorse the point that I had made earlier, that world over there is now a demand on the regulators that they have to be active and that they have to be alive to the needs of the ordinary investors.
Absolutely.
And people are raising questions, and quite rightly so, because they have been going through so much of turmoil over the last 4 years. They are quite legitimate in their raising their demands. Keeping that in mind, we in SEBI believe that we have to be accountable to the people of this country, and we should be very fair. Coming to the consent mechanism, the idea has emanated from that larger concern which we have. Talking about being boxed in, let me give you some interesting facts. The consent mechanism has been in place since 2007. Almost 1/3 of the applications which were received by SEBI were getting rejected. It's not that every application which was filed, it was accepted. 1/3 was getting rejected. The second issue was that the applications which were allowed, in that the consent amount or the settlement amount used to vary quite widely. So what we have done is, we have tried to bring in transparency in what can be consented and what cannot be consented.
Sure.
And how have we done it? We have analyzed these 1/3 applications which were getting rejected. We got our ideas from there, that why should we leave it at the discretion of our officials and create doubt in the minds of outside public? Why not say it upfront in a transparent way?
Sure,
that certain offences are very, very serious in our view. And we have support, for example, from the Criminal Law Justice Administration, where also certain things are compoundable and certain offences are not compoundable. We have followed the same logic.
And all of this is taken very well and appreciated. The only question I have when I use the word boxed in or the phrase boxed in is the question or the issue raised even by, let's say, Harvey Pitt, and I'm going to quote him. He said this is a very interesting and potentially very valuable experiment. Clearly, regulators across the world are looking at what SEBI is doing, and if SEBI succeeds in doing this, they may take a page from your book. But he also said that where there are cases where settlements immediately and produce huge benefit of investors will now have to await a guilty admission or a trial, that could mean a substantial time delay. So, what they say about justice delayed is justice denied. So that's one. Mr. Damodaran said, and I'm going to use his articulation because it's so much better than mine, I don't know whether if you keep so many categories of cases out, you will have the bandwidth to continue to fight these cases effectively in courts of law, because every setback you suffer in a court of law tends to somehow encourage people to take liberties with laws, rules and regulations, to do things which are not in the interest of the market or community. That is the only fear, that you will lose the urgency of time, and that if you lose in court, the enforcement message will not go out as strongly.
I have very high regard and respect for these two gentlemen that you are referring to, but allow me to differ from them completely, and they have perhaps missed the point. The argument that because we are not having consent proceedings and so the justice will be delayed is an argument that I cannot accept. On the contrary, the whole idea is that whatever bandwidth which we have in SEBI, that bandwidth is utilized for tackling serious crimes, serious offences, and the smaller offences which are now we are saying can be consented upon, they are taken to their logical end as early as possible, so that the staff in SEBI can concentrate on those offences. So it's a very convoluted argument. I'm sorry, I can't accept that. On the
other, do you have enough bandwidth is the question to be able to take so many cases to trial?
Very well. So what is the argument? Granted that we have limited bandwidth, is it your argument that because we have limited our bandwidth, so allow serious offenders to come and pay money to the to SEBI and get away? Is that your case?
No, that isn't the case.
I can't think that can be a legitimate case.
No, of course not. It isn't.
On the contrary, what has SEBI done? That look, you are a very serious offender. You must face music. You must face punishment. This and don't forget that when consent mechanism was first introduced in 2007, and we look at SEBI documents, the whole logic was that the bandwidth which we have, the manpower which we have, should be utilized for more serious cases and not for minor offences. So for dealing with minor offences, smaller offences, somebody has failed, for example, to make the disclosure at the right time, and it has not impacted the larger market. So I would rather like to have a consent with him rather than deal with him in a court of law and go for years. So the argument and the concern is something which doesn't inspire me. It doesn't convince me.
Okay. One of the offences you've taken off the list of consent is insider trading. There has been a lot of conversation on insider trading in the recent past here in India because of some high profile individuals of Indian origin that have been found guilty in the US justice system. I'm referring to Rajat Gupta or Raj Rajaratnam of South Asian origin. I think in the several discussions we've had on the matter, we've come to realize that there has been not a single successful criminal prosecution of insider trading in this country. And I'm putting the question to you, sir. There have been several prosecutions by SEBI when it comes to insider trading, many in the recent years as well. Why is it that SEBI has not pushed for criminal prosecution of insider trading?
If you are talking about the civil penalty versus the criminal penalty, my case is that SEBI's power and jurisdiction is very effective so far as civil penalty is concerned.
Yes, and that you've been doing in the last
civil penalty, I think SEBI has done a reasonably good job.
Yes, no doubt
about that. So far as the question of criminal jurisdiction is concerned, the SEBI Act permits it to file a prosecution in a court of law.
Not just you.
No. I appreciate your passion. Don't worry. I appreciate it. I'm not taking it on me. SEBI has filed, but unfortunately, our track record and experience has been very bad. We filed those cases. There are not even any earmarked cases. There are only one place or two places where there are earmarked courts. Even earmarked courts are not there. And the offences which against which we filed the prosecution, those offences are not taken very seriously. But number three, and most important, even if the prosecution is taken seriously, the final punishment which SEBI Act allows are very, very limited. So if you have what is happening in the USA in mind, you will find that the Indian law does not envisage a criminal punishment for these things in that measure of seriousness as it does for the civil penalty.
So in a criminal prosecution, if an insider trader is found guilty, he wouldn't have to go to jail?
Going to jail is just the starting. For how many years you go to jail? What is the type of evidence that is required to be given? What type of punishment in jail? Is it a simple imprisonment or a rigorous imprisonment? If you look at those issues and compare with the US system, with the Indian system and the SEBI system, then you will discover that the Parliament of India has not taken the criminal part of it, criminal prosecution part of it, as seriously as maybe the US has done.
Is that one thing you would like to see changed?
We can, but you know, the civil penalty part, if that is implemented effectively, lot of the deterrence will come in. And people get very excited when somebody is sent to jail, and especially if he is an important person. But the civil part has to be implemented first.
The civil part is you cannot access markets for a while, and then after 2 years later you can access markets. It's all very limited in terms of the penalties, right? Depending on individual penalties.
There is a very high level of penalty which is possible. SEBI Act in case of insider trading, for example, provides that the monetary penalty that can be given to you will be 25 crores or 3 times the unlawful gain you have made, whichever is higher. This is one of the few laws in the country where between the two options it is whichever is higher.
Right.
So it can be very, very effective. The problem is slightly different. Rather than getting excited about who is going to court, jail, or who is not going to jail, the problem is what is SEBI's capacity to gather evidence to prove that insider trading has happened. That is an area where SEBI has a problem.
in terms of the powers?
Yes, power to gather the evidence. In that context, SEBI has taken up with the government that allow us to have at least access to the call data records. There are 8 or 9 other agencies which have even got the power to intercept the calls, to monitor the calls. SEBI is not asking for it. SEBI is just asking for data records to show whether two persons who in SEBI's judgment have been acting in concert and together, whether they actually know each other or not, because before SEBI they are denying that we don't know each other. And that call data record can help us establish that. We are asking for a very small thing. I do hope that government will take a view very soon. We had a meeting about 3 weeks back and I was assured that government is going to take a call on this very soon. That is an important matter. If we get those powers, proving an act of insider trading will become easier.